Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Jacob Licklady here, back with the Ultimate Doctor Who Marathon number 4, and this time I'm taking a look at the story Marco Polo. Today is the 3rd of May, 2017, and we are starting with The Roof of the World, the first episode of the story. It seems like The Roof of the World, very much like the first episode of the past 3 stories, have really been to set everything up. And, I mean, this works, because I guess this sort of works, because this is going to be a very long one, as it is a total of 7 episodes long, which is kind of long. What's the challenge with this one, however, is that it's not moving, unlike the Daleks, which was 7 episodes, but went a bit quickly, because it was moving pictures. This one isn't, and, I mean, for The Roof of the World, that doesn't really affect it too much, because a lot of it is... It's very dialogue-heavy, so you don't have too much action going on. But if there's any action that picks up, that's probably going to be a bit more on the difficult side to get through. This is the first story by John Lucarotti, and he seems like Lucarotti seems like he was briefed after An Unearthly Child was written, which is really because you have the Doctor being a bit more. He's not quite connecting with his companions, but he's definitely much nicer to them. And I mean, William Hartnell, like, with the reveal of the cliffhanger, like, before the cliffhanger, where the character of Marco Polo reveals he's going to give the TARDIS to Kublai Khan to try to let him go home, Hartnell just goes into this insane fit of laughter, which is hilarious, just to listen to, and I mean, it just sort of feels like something that this Doctor would do, and we're really starting to see him become the Doctor. This episode also has just a really big feeling that it's trying to be both historically accurate and educational, because there's like some explanation about how melting of ice works, also how air pressure affects altitude, and some basic history from both Ian and Barbara, who, again, they're the school teachers. That's sort of their job, to be the history, just to sort of teach us, the audience, which of course works because this is an educational show. The show has the premise of being educational, which I kind of like. It gives it a unique flair overall, and, you know, very much something that I'm interested in continuing with, which is, you know, just having that sort of dynamic. I have to say, the episode really does a lot just to sort of set everything up. It starts with the setup that, because of the events of the last story, the TARDIS seems to have actually blown a fuse, and the Doctor has to fix it, but because it's so cold, they can't do it right away, and Marco Polo doesn't, and it turns out Marco Polo doesn't really want them to, he doesn't want them to stay up on the mountain, so he says, well, we'll take you down to the bottom, there's a way station down there, you can stop, and we can fix it, and it'll be fine. And then there's the reveal that, oh, you're going to have to travel with me, because I'm going to give the TARDIS to Kublai Khan as a gift, which is just this big reveal. And though Marco isn't treated like a villain, and Mark Eden does a great portrayal of this just through his dialogue. And there's just, it's just a lot of, it's really, like, he plays it with nuance, like, he's not trying to be a bad person, he just wants to go home, which is something that Ian and Barbara can definitely sympathize with, because they want to go home. It's just quite an interesting aspect to the portrayal that I think. And then there's also this subplot with Ping Cho, a girl serving Marco Polo, who's going to Kublai Khan's palace to be married to a 70-year-old man, which is, even for the 60s, it's you'd think they would. I mean, they just handle it with a lot of tact. Like, really, like 70 years old, and you're only 16? What? Yeah, that's handled pretty well, I think. Also, she's actually being played by an Asian actress, which I noticed, which is something surprising, considering there weren't many Asian actors, much less actresses, back in 1964 when this was made. But still, hey, with Waris Hussain, who's an Indian director at the helm, you kind of have an already kind of historically accurate cast, which is, he's going for obviously a more historically accurate cast. So there's some people in the yellow face, because you can't really get around that, but that doesn't bother me too much in this one, because, well, it's of the time. It's an awful practice, but it's of the time when you have to deal with it. But yeah, and then there's the subplot with Tagana, who initially wants the Doctor and crew dead, but but at the end, the big cliffhanger is revealed that he's got some poison, so what he's going to do is, because they're going to the Gobi Desert, and a big deal is made about how the Gobi Desert, it's the hardest part of the journey, and if they lose water, they're screwed. So, yeah, that is, so, and the episode with Tagana being given a vial of, I'm guessing it's poison, but poison that you can tell from the water, or something to make the water just not drinkable. So, yeah, Tagana is a very, very big villain, and then, I mean, it's dramatic irony, it's great for the audience, it's a great piece of dramatic irony, and, so outside of the weird flaws with some of the pacing, and I can't really judge too much of the direction. I think the direction's pretty good, because Warriors Hussein did do pretty good direction in Unearthly Child, and he's back here for at least this episode. So I'm gonna give Mark The Roof of the World an 8 out of 10, and I'll see you tomorrow with episode 2, The Singing Sands. Alright, it is now the 5th of May, and I just finished watching The Singing Sands, which is the second episode of Marco Polo. What's interesting is that the structure of the story seems to be, it's going to be a lot of just little mini adventures, I guess, as they journey to Kublai Khan's court, which, I actually feel like that's a good way to keep each day fresh. The Singing Sands is about them being in the Gobi Desert, and there is a sandstorm, hence the titular Singing Sands, and Susan and Ping Cho hide out in it because they follow Tagana out into the desert, and they get lost in it, and then it also deals with the, fell up to the cliffhanger of about how they're running out of water, so they decide, well, we'll take a detour, and we'll go to this oasis, and then, and just try to get water, and it ends with everybody's, about ready to fall over. The doctor's collapsed. They put him in the TARDIS just to try to keep him in comfort as they move on towards the oasis. Tagana's gone ahead to get water, and of course he's not going to bring any back. He's just going to wait there. That's the cliffhanger into the next episode. So everyone's, pretty close to dying. It's just in the desert, and it's really tense. So that's really all the plot that this does. It gives a really good chance to see Barbara be like a mother to Susan, because in the sandstorm, the doctor's asleep through the entire thing, and Barbara just sort of freaks out, which is, I guess you could say it's in character, a little out of character for her, but overall it really isn't, because, I mean, she has to kind of be, the motherly influence, and, that's, the doctor would kill her. What's also interesting is that William, and this is a complaint I have, William Hartnell really, he isn't in this one. He gets 2 lines of dialogue near the end, and that's it. And it's not like and this wasn't like a paid vacation like he will have later. It's just, he just wasn't there, so that's a bit of a big complaint. Yeah, so there's that happened in this episode, and I also have to say, really, Susan and Ping Cho, they have this really good, interesting relationship where they're just sort of friends, and they just sort of the two, they both talk about their travels and what they've seen, and it's just, they share a really, really good moment, and I just think it's enjoyable to listen to. Again, this one, even though it's reconstructed, you can really tell what's going on, because it's all very, very, very dialogue heavy. That's really about it. I mean, I will say Mark Eden as Marco Polo he's much nicer, even though, mainly because he's just trying to get them through the desert, and they can deal with the anger of the whole TARDIS thing later, and yes, the Doctor is still distant, which is good, but that's all I have to say, really. There just isn't too much else left for me to say, so I think I'll just have to give The Singing Sands a 9 out of 10, because there is the problem of Hartnell just not being there, and there's no real justifiable reason for it. Right, it is now the 5th of May, 2017, and I just finished watching 500 Eyes, the 3rd episode of Marco Polo, which, outside of a lot, this story's getting bogged down, I think, a bit, in what seems to be filler. The episode starts off well enough with a pretty good resolution to the water problem with, condensation from the walls of the TARDIS, which is heated from the cold outside and the heat inside at the night during the middle of the desert, creating water, which gets them to the oasis that they can go on, which is pretty good, and truly revealing that Tigana is, the Mongols are planning to back out of the treaty with Kublai Khan and try to take over the entirety of China, which is pretty good, which is in the titular Cave of 500 Eyes. But considering this is a reconstruction, and a lot of this episode is meant to be visual, just listening to it doesn't do it justice, and a lot of the story just sort of suffers for it, because you have this story about Aladdin killing a bunch of assassins that takes a good bit of the runtime, and I mean it's a genuinely interesting episode. It just sort of drags quite a lot, but it's definitely good, and it's definitely feeling like the story's still moving on. We're still progressing it, even if it's just a little bit. It's just sadly taking more time. And the cliffhanger is actually pretty good, with the Doctor and Barbara captured in this cave, where Tigana's men are sort of waiting for them, which is pretty good. I mean, it's a really good way to make the Doctor and Susan be in danger. And it's like, again, a good, how will they get out of this one? But other than that, they're just, I hate to say it, but this one was a very, very sort of, I guess, bland. Mark Eden again gives a really good performance doing the anger of Marco Polo, because he obviously thinks they betrayed them because they had water the whole time, when of course they didn't. It's a nice way to actually get the educational explanation of condensation into the episode, which I found kind of interesting that they would do it like that. Yeah, that's, I really hate to say it, but that's really all I can say about this episode. There just isn't too terribly much to listen to, so, I'll see you in the next episode, which is The Wall of Lies, as I give 500 Eyes a 7 out of 10, because it has definitely decreased in quality from the last one. Right, hello ladies and gentlemen, it is still May the 5th, 2017, because on May the 6th I am immensely busy and will not be able to record reactions to that episode, so I decided just to double up tonight with The Wall of Lies, which, thank goodness, it fares a little better than 500 Eyes. It's still very padding, but we actually get some character development as Marco Polo finds out about the whole, the Doctor having a second key to the TARDIS and working on the circuit while he's not looking, which makes for some really, really good character drama, and I really like. William Hartnell in particular gives an excellent performance this episode, as he's really playing just up the Doctor that he's really evolved more into the role. He seems much more comfortable in the role. He seems very comfortable around Ian and Barbara for the most part, and he just feels like he's becoming the Doctor. Like, he wants to get out, and he wants to go back to the universe and see everything, which is pretty good for the characterization of the character, because that's really what he'll be completely known for later on. Also, he actually shows he's much, he's got that sort of wit and this charm about him now. Like, you get lots of hints. I especially just noticed it in the opening scenes in the cave of 500 Eyes, where he's like, "Oh, young man, you're being crazy," and it's just a really, really fun performance. William Russell as Ian Chesterton also has that sort of a similar sort of wit that works really well. I have to mention that the direction in this episode was actually done by a guy called John Crockett, I think, which is weird because, it's just sort of, where's his hand will come back the next episode and be directing again. You really can't tell with telesnaps. Though I do have to thank myself, because this is still missing the cliffhanger. It's very difficult to tell what's going on in the cliffhanger, because a guy gets stabbed, and that's about really it. So it just isn't very clear what happens with the reconstruction I'm watching, which, okay, I can deal with it. It's just a little foible. But yeah, again, other than that, this episode we're back on track to being a good story, so I'll have to give The Wall of Lies an 8 out of 10. Alright, it is now the 7th of May, 2017, and I just finished watching Rider from SHANG-TU, which is, of course, the 5th episode of Marco Polo, and, okay, so the first 10 minutes of this are, again, sort of dedicated to ending the cliffhanger, And that's probably where I have the most problem with this episode, mainly because it doesn't do much. Other than establish more that Tagana is most definitely a villain in the eyes of Ian, Barbara, and Susan and the Doctor. But the audience has already known this from day one, so it's not really a big revelation. I mean, it almost makes him look kind of dumb for not realizing it sooner, because he was kind of doing crazy stuff. But once the titular writer from SHANG-TU appears, the episode gets moving as we go. We're getting closer and we're nearly at Kublai Khan's summer palace. And we are nearly towards where the conclusion is going to be. This is sort of getting us to the conclusion. Really, this episode is much more focused on Susan, who has to sort of come to terms with the fact that she's going to be leaving Ping Cho, who she's known. They've been on this journey for a couple of months now, and she's really grown to care about Ping Cho, which is kind of sad, like so much so that the cliffhanger into Mighty Kublai Khan is actually Susan being captured because she goes to say goodbye to Ping Cho, as the Doctor, Ian, and Barbara both have the TARDIS back, and they're about to leave, but Susan's the only one stopping them. And I have to say that makes quite a lot of sense overall, just for the episode to have that as the motivation for the ending of the episode, because it's a good way to sort of drag us out for another 2 episodes. I don't think the episode's really running out of steam. I just think they had this cliffhanger because they needed it. What they needed is they just needed a way to end it before moving on to the next episode, which, I mean, makes sense. Part of the problem with the first 10 minutes, though, is it's heavily action-oriented, so I can't really judge about it just from the very few sounds and just the pictures I see, because it is reconstructed, and it's not like an animation where you can sort of at least see moving. It's just there, which I personally don't really like. That just sort of annoys me quite a lot. I have to say, Tagana actually has this really, he's playing, you really have to take a moment just to realize how much of a good villain is. I noticed when I was watching it, because he goes, and he's like, right, I'm gonna get this guy to steal the TARDIS. It's just a harebrained scheme, and I don't think it's gonna work. I mean, and it's just sort of a portrayal of the villain that I really quite like, overall, for the character. Especially when you consider that he's doing this just because he wants to the TARDIS, which makes perfect sense. But yeah, that just sort of makes a lot of sense. And then he goes with this guy who is just this guy. I don't know the character's name, but he's this guy. This actor just hams it up. He's a spider monkey on his shoulder. He's wearing an eye patch. He has this toothy grin. It's creepy. And this episode sort of just has a lot of comic relief, I guess, which it really works. It helps you get through the story, which is, I mean, I don't want to say it's winding down. I mean, it's most definitely slowing towards a conclusion. I mean, the journey is getting close over, and it's going to be bittersweet, because, to be honest, this has been a pretty good journey so far. But with, and that, of course, being said, the journey has to end, because we got to move on to different stories overall. But with that being said, I'm going to have to give Writer from SHANG-TU, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10, because it is a bit fillery in places, but overall a pretty decent way to continue the story and bring us even closer to that conclusion. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is the 8th of May of 2017, and I just finished watching Mighty Kublai Khan, which is the 6th episode of Marco Polo. This one, it does really what it says on the tin. It introduces Kublai Khan, after resolving the cliffhanger, of course, and just sort of keeps the ball rolling in terms of plot as we go towards the end of the story. And really, there's only this is one that actually moves by quite quickly. There's only some slight problems when it comes to the pacing of about the first 5 minutes or so it's not too terribly bad when it comes to having a sort of a plot problem, but it still isn't very good. It still isn't perfect considering it, and it's just nice to have an episode that is just sort of seems very final, as this one sort of does. It feels like we're getting ready to a conclusion. Tigana is definitely revealed to be the traitor here. Again, still annoying that it is quite a few episodes in when he's revealed to be the traitor, because he's been acting traitorous this whole time. And Bingcho actually does something for herself to get away from her marriage, her arranged marriage, by just running away, which gives some nice action to the character. Ines would rescue her. It's obvious padding, but it's actually pretty decent padding nonetheless, with quite a few good things coming from it. And then, though the titular Kublai Khan and, of course, the Doctor have this amazing relationship, as they both have gout and they can't bow, and everyone's supposed to bow down to the Khan. The Doctor can't. It just seems really, really funny, and it just sort of works. But again, this episode, it's really good, but it's just that sort of light on plot transition episode to get us to the finale, which is Assassin at Peking. I'll stop the recording here, and I've actually decided, because tomorrow evening I have to work, and I'd rather not have to post a video late at night. I can obviously record, but I'm going to just finish up Marco Polo now, because it's been so engaging, and I may as well finish. So, Mighty Kublai Khan, at the end of it, the day gets a 9 out of 10 for being an excellent penultimate installment, and just getting us ready for the final episode. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, it's still May the 8th, 2017, as I'm doubling up episodes tonight, just so I don't have to post this video tomorrow. So we're with episode 7, Assassin at Peking, which is, it's a really good conclusion. I think it's probably it's not the strongest of the episodes, but it's still pretty good. You have the Doctor and the Khan playing backgammon with each other as a way to try and get the TARDIS back, which is actually a really, really good motivation to get the TARDIS back, and just generally a good idea for the audience to realize, hey, this is how we're going to get it back, and it really does increase the tension, especially when the reveal is who won the final game, which was, well, it wasn't the Doctor, so that even adds a bit more despair. There seems to be no way the Doctor's getting the TARDIS back this time around. But of course, that is not the case, as the TARDIS does get returned to them eventually in this episode, and they move off. And then, basically, this episode it wraps up all the plot, and it's been a nice little bow. Ping Cho's husband drinks liquid mercury, trying to make himself be younger, as that was a practice of the day, so he died. Because mercury's poisonous, and you should never try drinking it, because it will kill you. Tigana's treachery is revealed after he tries to kill the Khan, and he gets killed, and his master's armies are revoked, and the Doctor, Susan and Barbara get their TARDIS back, and Marco Polo is allowed to go home. It's all just wrapped up in an episode that's really funny. One complaint I do have is that Hartnell seems to be going he feels a little tired, I guess, at acting. I mean, I think maybe he's been going at this for, a good, at least 20 weeks now. I mean, this is his 20th week of production, plus the stuff done earlier on, so you just get a feeling that Hartnell is ready for the role to sort of be winding down this time around. Whereas, and it really just doesn't. It keeps going, and he's got to keep being the Doctor, and he's just got to conclude. And then, but what's nice though is that it seems, and then what's interesting though is that this episode really features the first sort of story break. While I'm personally not putting anything in here extra, we are going to move right along to the next televised story. Most people do like to put the lost story, The Fragile Yellow Bark of Fragrance, here, which I often do, but for this series, for the means of the series, I am putting it at the end of season 1, just because it works with the first Doctor. Just put the entire first Doctor box set together, and not have to deal with changing numbering. Other than that, the episode was really good. That's really all I have to say. It's an excellent episode, just a great way to end the story and give us something really to think about while we move on to the next episode. which is, of course, the next story is, of course, The Keys of Marinus. But I will give Assassin at Peking a 9 out of 10. That being said, this gives the average score of Marco Polo a total of 8.29 out of 10, putting it at the highest rated Hartnell so far of the 4 Hartnells I've gone through. Thanks again for watching. Please leave a comment, and subscribe, and I will see you next time in about 6 days' time or so when we watch The Keys of Marinus.